have you ever thought about actually buying another business or other businesses and create more passive income for you and your family? That's what we're talking about today. And welcome our guests, Bekki and Jon from Nashville. Bekki and Jon are business owners of 5 companies, and they have a proven track record of managing multiple facets of the business. From operations, sales, team building, all that. And they have successfully grown and expanded their businesses, securing multiple contracts on these projects, clients, and in lots of different markets and regions. It was a pleasure meeting you guys a month or so ago. Welcome to the closing table. How are y'all from Nashville?
Good. It's hot down here, but we're good.
It is hot. Currently it is, let's see, at a good 5 o'clock in the afternoon. My pool is 93 degrees. Which is the temperature I heat it up to in the winter sometimes. And it's 96 with 60% humidity. So we're living the same game. Okay. So Jon and Bekki, this is a very unique subject and it attracts a lot of interest. I think the reason it probably attracts a lot of interest is because there really isn't, from my experience, and I'm in a lot of the business world and talking to people and networking and all that, there isn't really like a ton of information of actually how to go about doing it. People hear about it, but there's not like this, there's not a ton of information from my perspective. Maybe you guys have ran into it, but I haven't. How did you stumble across getting into we're going to go buy businesses? Because Bekki, you're a real estate agent, you run your team. And then Jon, I don't remember. What did you do before this, by the way?
I owned a business.
Okay.
So I actually kind of got into this because I owned a grading and utility company, and I was actually in partnership with it. And about 2 years ago, that relationship kind of fell apart. And for better or worse, we kind of decided to split ways, and it ended up that I sold my interest in it. And so I had a kind of a wandering through Egypt season in my life for about 3 to 4 months, trying to figure out, what's the next step for me. And I pretty much wrote down and spent some time with my wife, Bekki, just trying to say, what is it that I want and what is it that is non-negotiable. And, I knew I wanted to, obviously be self-employed and be an investor. I knew that I'd make a horrible employee because I've been self-employed for too long. I'd be a horrible employee. And, I just didn't necessarily have the energy to do a startup again.
Yeah.
I knew what that would take, and I did not have that in me. And, of all places, I guess, the wizards and the internet know that you start searching for what I'm going to do. I guess I got marketed on Facebook, of all places, by a guy that sold a course. His name was Roland Frazier, and he's kind of the guru of the acquisition space. And so he had a 3-day class that I signed up for, took it, where it was kind of step by step. And then before you know it, 3 days later, I'm hot on the trail for a business, my first acquisition.
Awesome. And then how was, you went there's obviously that risk factor in there, and being the fact that you already had started a business, going into, how is your confidence level going in? Hey, I'm actually going to find one and this is going to work out. Cause it's all about risk and reward. And the reason most people in the world are not business owners is because they're not willing to take the risk.
That's right.
So what was your psycho mindset when you were all right, I'm 100% committed to doing this?
I pretty much from the get-go. Now, I did have the luxury of running a business prior to this. So right. I kind of been through the ringer. I've been through the school of hard knocks and pretty much made every mistake in the book to know things that work and things that don't work. So I do have that luxury to where I wasn't coming out of just a typical W-2 environment, going into business ownership. And plus I've, it's not for the weak of heart, I guess.
Right.
Going into this. But right off the very bat, it's just like in real estate. And I know most of your audience is in real estate, but if you decided that you wanted to start selling houses and being a real estate agent, the very first thing you got to do is let everybody in your warm market know, hey, this is what I do.
Right.
And so I pretty much had to repivot and say, hey, I'm an investor. I'm looking for, I had to that's what I changed my LinkedIn profile, my Facebook, my Instagram. Mm-hmm. I'm an investor and I'm looking for businesses to buy. And it became part of my normal conversation. And typically when you're out looking for businesses to buy, you're going to find businesses to buy. You kind of said it here. It was interesting. You said, I didn't even know that this was here and there's not a whole lot of content. I was literally having a conversation with my partner and I was like, man, this content's everywhere. I don't know if it's just because that's what I'm looking for, but I see it all over the place. I feel like everybody's doing it. But that's because that's what I'm focused on.
Right.
And
confirmation bias, right? It's like you buy a red card and suddenly everybody's driving a red car,
Which those of us in business, I think that's a good lesson because, I tell people in real estate, I'm like, hey, you may be thinking about real estate all the time, every day, all day, but not everybody else is. And so you can become the source of information and value to help people understand it because they're not thinking about it and you bring it to their attention. So so you're basically everywhere you go, they can't get away from you without, you're kind of explaining in a very natural way of kind of what you're doing.
I feel like in general, most of the time when I meet people in general, whether it is in social settings or non-social settings, there's two things that usually happen. What's your name and what do you do? Mm-hmm. And so, I tell them what I do. I buy businesses and a lot of times they're like, what? Okay. And automatically they've got a slew of questions. Well, how many businesses? Like, how do you do that? How do you find them? And so a lot of times I ask them flat out, do you have friends or family that are looking to exit a business that might be wanting to retire? Or do you know somebody that maybe be interested in talking with me?
I think one thing that's interesting from a realtor perspective is that when I don't know if anybody else has experienced this, but when I first got into the industry, when people would ask me what I did for a living, I would almost kind of breathe under my breath, like, oh, I'm a real estate agent, because, people have a negative association with that a lot of times. And I really had to get clear about the value that I provide and being able to answer that with confidence. But for the most part, unless I'm a very good salesman and listening to a lot of Phil Jones, when people say, what do you do? It can be a one-liner. I'm a real estate agent. That could easily be the end of the conversation. Right. And what I've found really interesting as we've gotten into the more and more of these conversations about buying businesses, people are so curious. Whenever, when you say, hey, we buy businesses, it is unlike anything else. It's unlike saying I'm a heart surgeon. It's unlike like saying I'm a firefighter or whatever, because people really don't have that context, as you mentioned earlier, to be able to put their heads around what does it mean to buy businesses because they have never heard of somebody doing that.
Yeah. I've heard of it in the world, but that's why I reached out to you guys because I was like, okay, this is unique. I've not, and I'm sure that's why you got such, people reached out to you as well because it's very, very unique. So you were a business owner, you built a business, you stepped into this. So you have the average Joe out there who has a full-time job, wants to do it. You did this full time, right? You jumped in that. And so what do you feel like the financial setup's got to be for someone who's going to do this? Can they do it and also have a full-time job? I'm assuming Bekki, you were working, so you were trying to help while it took a while I guess my biggest was how long before you started doing it did you get that first, return or whatever, whenever time that would be?
Yeah. For me?
Yes.
Yeah. It was, like I said, I think within the first day of me searching, I found a hot lead.
Okay.
A company I ended up buying.
It took a year. It took a year to buy that.
Right.
It's actually my second, the first day, we had a list here of like your warm market and business professionals that you deal with on a regular basis. So I was just kind of working my way down the list. And, one of I think like the third or fourth one was like your accountant.
Right.
So I called my accountant that I have a relationship with and was like, hey, Matt, I know you dealt with a lot of people just like me that own businesses. Do you have any clients that are looking to retire? And he's like, I do. Yeah. And he had two of them. And I said, well, can you put me in touch with him? He's like, absolutely. Let me talk to him first. And then, now it was a roofing company. that was actually the second company I ended up buying because, like Bekki said, it did take a year to get to the closing table on that one. But, it was within that first day, I was like, man, this can be done.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And so I think the question that you asked is how does the average, maybe one of your listeners, if they're listening, like, how do they get into it? Whether I think there's a spot for just about anybody in this. There is no one size fits all. And I think probably the worst thing that could happen is somebody saying, well, I've never owned a business, so I couldn't do it. And they automatically disqualify themselves. You can be a passive investor. I'm looking to buy companies and not have a job in that company, but actually own it. And I'm putting leadership in place and managing the leadership in the company. That's how I've chosen to do it. But just as easily, if you're passionate, say, about podcast, for lack of a better word,
sure.
I'm sure you could go around with all these people that have podcasts, just like you, Ryan. Would you be interested in selling your podcast?
Right.
And now most of the time people are going to be like, well, I don't know how much you're offering. I mean, it's a pretty easy conversation to have, but people can get interested in their hobbies, their family business, their friend's business. They can take an active role in it. They can be a great sales professional. If they're missing some skills and say, man, I don't know anything about financing or accounting or marketing or sales or operations, you can always hire people to do those roles in the company or partner with somebody else that's looking to have an equity stake. So, you can be as involved in the business as you want, or you can be as uninvolved as you want. So I think sometimes people can get themselves in a trap where they thinking that there's just one way to do this, and there's really not. Just like there's a million different ways to structure buying a company.
Right. Now, you mentioned skills. You're a previous business owner. You knew P&Ls, I'm sure. You knew balance sheets, all that. What have you seen has been skill sets you feel like are really needed for what you're doing now?
I am marvelously unqualified to be doing what I'm doing right now. I'll tell you that. I was, and I joke about it because, I ran a business. I owned a business, and it's a completely different set of skills of not making the decisions, the day-to-day CEO level decisions in a business, and letting somebody else do that and not muddying the waters. And so, since I've been on this journey, I've made a lot of mistakes because I'm unqualified to be running 5 businesses, but I'm learning. And there's a great quote that I use all the time from Mark Twain that said, a boy learns something by carrying a cat by its tail that he can learn in no other way. Right. And so in some ways, I think that's the same way with business, is that there's no way to shortcut this. You can't take a class to learn how to do this. You can't, I took a class. I learned a class. You got to be motivated is what it really did. Right. Yeah. I took that class. They gave me enough information to get motivated to go in and make a mess. Yeah. But you can't take a class to learn how to do this stuff. You just got to, trudge your way through it. And, as long as you're passionate about it and you're not willing to give up and you're always looking to learn more. I think there's a pathway for anybody that has some skills. And
Ryan, it kind of, you're going to find people in real estate who kind of have their niche of what's worked well for them, and they're going to tell you you're never going to have a business if you're not willing to go out and door knock, or you're never going to have a business if you're not willing to do internet ads or whatever, cold call, and they're going to tell you what has worked for them. But the truth of the matter is that for every time you say that this would never work, you could find 50 people out there that have been marvelously successful doing exactly the opposite of what you're saying, and I think that part of that is just the nature of self-employment, and the fact that businesses can be run from very many perspectives and still experience success, and that's kind of the beauty of it, that you can get into a niche of kind of like, what are your superpowers, what work really well, and hope that your strong suits are going to outweigh anything that happened to be holes, because we're all going to have holes in every business. You're not going to get to the point that you're a across the board perfect business owner. But I think one of the things that Jon is uniquely gifted at is scaling. And he's inspired me a lot, even in my real estate business, to learn to let things go and allow qualified people to do what qualified people do, and realize that the whole world doesn't fall apart if I'm not at the helm 24/7. And that's a huge shift, going from being self-employed to owning a business. And that's a painful growth process. I recently just hired my first full-time employee, and so far so good, but it's still, we're 25 days into it, and there's still these moments of me believing that, oh yeah, I've got to go and do all this. And it's just this transition of learning to let some things go. And I feel like Jon is very good about recognizing that instead of it being a scary thing to hire more people to do some of these jobs that really aren't his highest and best use of his time, I don't think he approaches that with fear. I think he approaches it with, the more people that I can employ, the more impact that I'm going to have. And that ultimately the higher our revenue is going to be. And so I think that he goes after hiring people with a mindset of, this is exciting, we're growing, where I have struggled at times in my business to feel like, man, if I got to hire somebody, that feels like a loss. And that feels super scary. And his mindset on it is just completely different than mine. And he's, in some ways, when it comes to our businesses, he's just been much further ahead down the road with that. In his previous company, I think he probably had 50 employees. I think we've got close to 85 now. So he's had a lot of experience of realizing that it's not beneficial to him whatsoever to take on multiple roles and spend his time doing that. He's much better off delegating and sticking to what he's best at.
That's great. I mean, and Jon, you kind of downplayed like, hey, whatever, but I mean, dude, there's no way you can be doing what you're doing without a pretty phenomenal skill set. But what I do hear you saying is it could be different for every single person.
Yeah, absolutely.
And everybody has their strengths, everybody has their weaknesses. It sounds like you've surrounded yourself with people that maybe compensate for what you might feel like is some of your weaknesses. But I mean, you obviously have a strong suit that, if you're scaling, that means you've got a strong foundation, right? I mean, not that it's perfect, but if you're scaling, you're doing something right.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I feel like I'm naturally curious, and I'm always learning more. And I have a bias towards action. Is kind of one of my core characteristics that I like to, make decisive decisions and act quick. I also have a lot of partners. We do mention we own 5 businesses, but I don't own 100% of any of them.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I've some of them I own 50 at the most. I own 50% of some of them, and I'm down as little as 5% on the 5th one.
What's the average amount? I mean, not including just what you have, but from the people in the world you're in, what's the average amount of partners they're joining together to do this? Would you say?
It really depends on the size of the business too, right? Sure. 96% of all businesses in America make less than $1 million a year,
right? And
so that's a huge number, which it will mean 1 to 3 employees are in that realm. So there's a lot of really small businesses that you could buy for $200,000-300,000 a year. Or buy for $200,000 or $300,000 that are out there.
Yeah.
We continue to push the envelope to where now we're looking at the largest business that we bought was in the $5.5 million in revenue.
Okay.
We're pushing that up now to where we're saying the next one we're going to take down probably needs to be closer to 10 million. Mainly because you spend about the same amount of energy and time on a 10 million as you do a 200,000.
I know that world in real estate. The $300,000 house takes just as much as time as a $2 million house. So yeah,
that's right.
I get it.
Yeah. And most of our deals though, we have usually between 2 and 3 people involved. Obviously the ones where 50% partnership, then that's, 2 of us. We've got a lot of the 33.3% ownerships, which is 3 of us. And so that's kind of the world that we're in. And we've primarily been looking to purchase businesses somewhere between the $2 and $6 million price point. We haven't bought in really anything less than that. And so that gives you an idea that at a $2 to $6 million figure, you ought to be able to take it down with 2 to 3 people.
All right. So this is going to beg a big question, because a lot of people are hearing these numbers and they're like, okay, I don't got $1 million on a $2 million. I can't go 50% on that. How, what is the minimum investment? And I know that also, depends on the amount of investors you have, but like realistically, from what you've seen, what do you feel like is the minimum investment someone's going to make out of pocket? Is financing involved for yourself? How does that work out? How does that play out? I mean, just a quick kind of the person sitting out there going, I ain't got no money, man. I'm broke, but I want to do this. What do you do?
Yeah, I mean, to start with, you don't have to have all that money. It's just like buying a house. You can buy a house pretty much minimum these days 10 to 20% down.
Less than that, 3%.
Hey, bro,
0%.
the VA loan's the best product out there. 0% down.
Yeah.
Well, and I have bought a business with zero money too.
Wow.
So,
yeah.
and you can have cash buyers on homes too. And there's tons of people that pay 100% for a business. Now, the larger the business is, which I'm going to say is $5 million and above, mm-hmm. the easier it is to sell it to what is called private equity, which is institutional money, essentially. Private equity is if you don't track private equity, it is a huge engine in GDP for America. They're gobbling up private companies left and right because it's one of the single best investments to make alive. Now, the other 96% of the businesses in America are not appetizing to those large buyers. And so typically they're very difficult to sell. Usually you have an owner that is extremely active in it. Usually the accounting system is
archaic.
If it can get it be as bad as a shoebox.
Right.
And a lot of times there's no systems or processes in place. And so you can get in a situation like that where you might be buying more of a job than necessarily a business. Mm-hmm.
But could it be an opportunity? Because I feel like, like in real estate, I mean, the ones that are good for the most part, especially in today's market, you have to be phenomenal marketers. And there's probably a lot of businesses out there, they don't do any marketing. I mean, what's interesting story. So a friend of mine, he worked in oil and gas in here in Houston for the longest time, but he loved to fish and he loved going down to Cancun and fishing. And, Houston's great for that because it's like a 2-hour flight there. I can literally be in a resort and, from the time I get to the airport in 3 hours, like that part's great. He was like, I just want to fish the rest of my life. How do I do it? So he was down there fishing and he was looking for a fishing charter and could not find reviews. Like every single charter was like 5 reviews, and they were all ran by local guys there who never left the country. They're great fishermen, but they're horrible marketers. And so he went down there and basically became, one of the number 1 fishing charters in Cancun, basically by getting Google reviews, like following up with people and going, I need you to give me a review, and obviously delivering quality service. And he's crushing it. And I'm like, I feel like, okay, I want to go do the fishing thing now, because I'm like, I could crush your reviews, bro. But, I feel like there's opportunities that people have skill sets that the small town business man may not have the SOPs, the marketing, the whatever do you kind of look at that when you're going to buy a business going, okay, this guy could be way bigger than he is. He's just not doing anything.
For sure. And one of the things is that I feel like even the stuff that, through Tom Ferry that we learned from Jason Pantana, the stuff that's through Google right. My Business, tons of marketing stuff like that, Facebook, social media has been so applicable to that. That's kind of like he tells me all the time, he was like, you are the marketing genius. He has all this skill set. He's so smart. He's so talented, but he does not have the heart of a marketer. And so that's where I'm able to kind of come in and say, hey, these are the takeaways from the podcast I just listened to or the classes I just went to. When we go to Summit, I know I'm going to come back with pages of notes. Right. And I'm financially, it makes more sense. I mean, I'm doing both, but it makes more the ROI is much better dumping those resources from what I know into these small businesses than what will ever make sense for me as a solo agent.
Yeah. Jon, you stealing our stuff, man? You taking our stuff and utilizing it? No. But honestly, that's what makes you guys a good duo, is because you kind of got both skill sets there, right?
It's called R&D, rip off and duplicate.
That's right. We do it all the time. Yes.
but yeah, so the roofing company that we bought had been in business since 1981. They got their start in the Yellow Pages. Now they didn't have a website when I bought the company.
Good gracious, man.
And it's not that uncommon to do that. Now, I will say this, because you shared a great story about your friend that bought the fishing charter.
Yeah.
You, Ryan, and me, and most of the people that are listening to your podcast are smart people.
Right.
They're very smart people because they're curious and they're spending their time listening to this instead of watching TV. Now, smart people usually have answers. And if we don't know the answer, we're going to find the answer eventually. Now, what your friend did was yes, he's slick at marketing.
Right.
But what I would say is that he actually asked an incredible, great question that he didn't know the answer to. How do I fish for a living?
Right. Yes.
But he didn't know that answer, but he knew what the right question was. And then he starts searching for the answer.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
And so sometimes it really leads with not trying to have all the answers, but trying to find out what the right question is.
That's great.
The right question might be, how do I live my life under these set of circumstances? And then spend some decent time thinking about it, and you're going to eventually come up with some answers, especially when you start looking for it.
That's great. No, I mean, you're right. Having the right question. That's because I think a lot of times we're looking for the answer before we even have the question. You know what I mean? So yeah, you're right. All right. So here's another thing. By the way, let's pause for just 1 second. Every podcast I do the drink of choice. And when your drink of choice came in and said me what it was going to be, I was like, okay, these are my kind of people. Because everybody knows me. I'm a bourbon collector. I mean, when you said George Stagg barrel proof, I was like, boom, 138.5, 138.9. That's some hot stuff, bro.
Yeah. So I actually got a fallen soldier on this podcast. I just finished this is the rest of it. So,
dude, that on the resale market, I think probably goes for like $1,500 now.
Yeah, I know.
I don't know what's the face value of that.
I think you're about right. And it sounds great. This is actually part of my. This was concrete by design.
Okay.
So every time he buys a business, he didn't have a midlife crisis, but whenever he buys a business, he accumulates a very expensive bottle of bourbon.
I need to build that into our business plan but my ops manager would probably not like that.
Right?
But
you just justify it, right?
It was by accident because I happened to be the first really expensive bottle of bourbon I bought was a Pappy Van Winkle. And I had been looking for it, and it just so happened that I got it within the same week that I bought my first business. And I thought it was cool, and I was like, I should do this every time, to commemorate the celebration. I'm just going to buy an expensive bottle of bourbon every time I buy or sell a business. And so I held on to it for a while because it was going to break my heart to drink a bottle that was that expensive. But then I was like, after a while, it's like, you know what? They're meant to be drunk.
They are. Problem is, I'm a huge collector. It's just like something in me. I can't open it. If it's like super. So the best bottle I have and it was crazy I was in a raffle, and on my wife and I's 10th anniversary night, I won a Pappy 23, which is like, I think that resells now for like $3,000 or something like that. I mean, I was like, Lauren, I don't know what is going to have to happen in my life for me to tear off the top of that. Like, I just couldn't, I can't think of one thing right now. I mean, maybe my kids getting married, maybe, we retire. That's going to be a very difficult decision. Are y'all going to Summit, by the way?
Yes.
Okay.
We have an event at Summit actually the night before it starts.
Oh, cool.
Yeah. We're actually putting on
we're doing a business buying seminar. So it's going to
awesome.
be a 3-hour dinner at 60 Vines. We've got a private room there.
Am I allowed to come to that?
Absolutely.
All right.
I'll give you details.
But let's share a glass there, and then we can talk bourbon as well. But I'm drinking, by the way. This is mine, just so you can see.
I saw it. I saw your Weller.
Well, I had the other one, but I decided for you guys, I have the green bottle. But this is actually my favorite Weller, which is the foolproof.
Are you able to get it pretty easily?
Not foolproof. The green bottle, special reserve, we can get pretty much anytime. Not anytime, but you can get it. Anything beyond that, Weller wise, no, you cannot get it. You can get it in secondary, but you're going to pay 3-4 times the amount of whatever that is. But that is so cheers to you guys in Nashville. Do you have your bottle right there?
Yeah. I just spent
what is the percentage? I'm curious.
This is 130.4 proof.
Okay, so that's not. I mean that is hot because Weller. This Weller foolproof is
115.
Yeah, 114. But I have a 138.7 bottle of Stag, and I'm telling you, like, you're not eating anything after that. You're not drinking anything after that. Like, your tongue is gone. Like, you can't feel anything, but it does taste good. Actually, my new favorite bottle that's been like tasty, and we're not going to make this a bourbon podcast, but what is it called? Midsummer's Dream or something like that. I can't remember the name.
Midsummer Night's Dream.
What's that?
Midsummer's Night's Dream.
Dude, it was like I was drinking dessert. It was like a caramel or creme brulee in liquid form. It was so good, but I like it a little more spicy. So anyway, okay. So here's something I think would be good for beneficial for people. And you got to try to simplify it because like you just said, hey, it took me a year to buy this business, but give us, and you don't have to mention the name of the business or whatever, but give us an example of the process you went. How did it go? How did you actually buy the business? As simplified as you can, so that someone's sitting there going, just so they can just picture in their head, what does it look like to actually go through the process of buying it?
Right. So the first business, I'll start with the first one.
Sure.
I was reaching out to people, letting them know what I was doing. About a month later, I had a friend that said, I could use your help in my business, just doing some accounting, helping me clean up some mess because he had just lost his accountant and his CFO. And so I was in there just doing kind of maybe a 2-week gig for him. And he happened to have somebody call him while I was around him saying, hey, would you be interested in buying a retaining wall company? And he's like, no, I'm not, but I'm sitting here right next to somebody that's looking to buy businesses. And that was the start of that first conversation. And so, I talked to that person and had a over the phone conversation with them, just kind of saying, hey, my name's Jon. Tell me, and I did a lot of question asking. I tried my best not to talk very much and just asked them, tell me about your business. How'd you get started? What is your employees like? Do you love it? What do you hate about it? Why are you selling? What is something good about it, something bad? And, we just had a ton of conversations. I said, hey, would you like to get together for drinks one night this week and talk a little bit more further? Because it does sound like something I'm interested in. And so most of it just kind of starts, and all my businesses have kind of started that way, which is really just it's a phone call that usually
organically
that leads into a coffee or a Zoom meeting or grabbing dinner. I get to know them. I build rapport. And then it usually steps into a little bit more detail where I'm like, this is something I'm interested in. Can I see your financials? And we might end up, a lot of times we end up sending a non-disclosure agreement, which basically says that I'm not going to share your information or that you're even selling with anybody, and vice versa. Most of the time these owners are looking at selling, but they're really afraid that their employees are going to find out or their customers are going to find out. And so they're really kind of private about this in the very beginning. And so you really got to assure them that says, hey, I'm
discretion.
I'm going to be discreet about this. Mm-hmm. And so I usually look at their 2 to 3 years worth of financials to see how much money does this company actually make. Now, without getting super detailed, and some of this we talk about in our course that we'll be given at Summit, and other things we can do offline. But It's called EBITDA, earnings before interest, taxes, depreciation, and amortization, which is just a fancy word for how much money does this business generate.
Right.
And a lot of times, as just a rule of thumb, most small businesses are selling at 2 to 5 times a multiplier of that. So if a company is making 100,000 in EBITDA, it could sell anywhere from 2 to 500,000. Just as going in simple round numbers here. So we've got to figure out, hey, what does this business look like? If you take the owner out and I was to hire somebody to take that owner's spot to run the business, I'm going to have to pay them a salary. I'm going to have to, how much money is this thing going to make, and come up with a price that I'm willing to spend on it. And then after that, once we kind of agree on a price, it's really about figuring out how is he going to get paid? What are the terms of this deal?
Sure.
And what did you do on the retaining wall? What were those terms like?
It was so I paid $100,000 at the closing table for that retaining wall business
of my money. Yeah.
And I turned around and had they left $500,000 in working capital in the business, so I was able to. I spent $500 to get $500.
You spent $100.
$100 to get $500. Yes.
Yeah, $100 to get $500, and the rest of it was owner financing. So we basically did a 10-year balloon.
On the 400.
Yes.
Okay, got it.
No. We bought the business for $1.9 million.
Oh, got it. Okay, missed that. That's kind of big. Got it. Okay, all right.
I bought it for $1.9 million. I put $100,000 down.
Got it.
And then the rest of that was made in owner finance payments that are being made over the next 10 years.
So then then that happened, and then you set that structure up, and your knowledge of getting that structure set up came from like the training you'd had from.
Yeah. So the like I said, the class that I took was really just kind of more of an inspiration. Like, you can do this, and here's where the resources are, and get started studying this. I think he kind of sets out the framework, right? Like step 1, step 2, step 3, step 4. But in today's world, there's really no excuse. Like I said, NDA. You can Google NDA forms, contracts on Google, and you'll get 1,500 different options. You download it, you read through it. It doesn't really mean a whole lot. It's not like you have to have a lawyer draft this up and spend $5,000 having a lawyer drop up an NDA. Just read it, and they're pretty much the same thing. And I use that for my NDA, my letter of intent, which is just an offer. I got off the internet. I made some revisions to it. But
coming up with the numbers, you're just kind of, playing it out. Was there a structure you had from somebody to do that, or you just kind of being a business owner, you kind of knew?
Well, most of it, I didn't know it being a business owner because I'd never sold a business before. And just so you know, every time I bought a business, I learned something from it that I wish I would have done different.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So
I bet.
There's, I've finished my 5th, and so every time I'm getting better at it. So, but the most important one is just getting started and buying that first business. Or if you get lucky enough, it might be big enough that it's your only business.
But I'm assuming you guys are also open. As you're looking for it, maybe there's people who don't have the search abilities you have. I'm sure if there's people that listening here or across the country, Tom Ferry world, that, they could contact you if they're interested in partnering up with you as well.
Yeah, 100%. Absolutely. I've had several people reach out that says, man, I've got this business. I want to be a part of it, but they feel a lot more comfortable if they were partnered with somebody that's ran a business before. They've got the desire, but maybe they're a little bit scared or nervous. There's no rule that says you have to own 100% of it. In fact, I prefer not to own 100%.
That makes sense, right?
My question was, how do I, we were searching, the name of my company is One Freedom Holdings.
Sure.
And I chose that word because I was searching for freedom, not being because I felt like even when I ran my own business, I was really not, I thought owning my own business would make me free, but it really kind of imprisoned me to where I was working late nights, long hours. I didn't feel like I could ever go on vacation.
Man, are you describing my life or something?
So, I said, how do I continue to make money and capitalize on my skills while at the same time having freedom to spend with my wife and my 3 boys and be able to go on vacation and not have to clock into an office every day. And so I've tried to create a life that is in line with that. And I'm still in the process of creating it. And in fact, I don't think I'll ever be done. I don't plan on retiring because
we're having the most fun we've ever had.
Yeah. Here, I got a question for you too. What would you say? Because, in the TF world, we're always, we're pushing people for investment, and you can diversify yourself as much as you can. But looking at real estate investment currently right now and looking at buying businesses, which is more profitable for you right now?
Oh, for sure. It's going to be buying businesses.
Okay. Like it's hands down.
Oh, it's hands down. I mean,
Okay.
Because that's what private equity is doing to begin with.
Right.
I mean, if the average American, right, let's just say they had $100,000 just in cash.
Sure.
And they want to invest it. Most Americans would immediately think about investing in how?
I mean, real estate or stock market?
Stock market, yeah. And so in the stock market, a good return is going to be anything from you're doing well at a 12% to 15% return. You're
smoking, if you're doing that. Yeah.
In real estate, what do you think the average return on real estate is?
I don't know. I mean, it's because it's how you look at it. I mean, the equity, the cash flow, all that stuff. But it's not 12 to 15%. I don't think. I mean, long term, it may be more than that.
9% is
sure.
A number I've floated before. Yeah. But most small business enterprises return on investment is going to be well in excess of 50%. Now, last year our return on investment was really over 200%.
Wow.
For the money that we invested. Now, the question is, what is your return on investment if you invest nothing? No cash. That's in it. If you put that in the calculator, it says error. Right. So, if you can buy a business with no money out of pocket, owner finance it and let the business earnings pay that owner back and pay that interest, it really didn't cost you anything and you've got an infinite return. Yeah. So, private equity is kind of the way that they're doing it. I mean, they raise billions and billions of dollars. They find a business that makes great money. They buy it. Usually they pay about 80% of the cash for it. The rest of it is, 20% goes back, either investment into the private equity firm or it's an earnout. They keep that owner on for 3 years. They put systems and process in place. They grow it, and then they turn around and sell it for, a higher multiplier. Mm-hmm. I had a friend that he sold his business for $12 million. And the acquiring company was rolling up companies just like his. And within 2 months of the close, after he closed on that business, 2 months later, they had already sold his business.
Good Lord.
And made like 3 times what they bought it for.
And how? Why?
Because they made a lot of money. That was their plan.
But that quick they did. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, they were already, when they bought it and had it under contract, even though they hadn't gone to the closing table, they were already marketing it.
Got it. Okay.
Because they bought 3 others similar size. They were going to roll it up into a larger company that's worth more and sell that whole thing. So they had bought, they had rolled this up and they were already marketing it and had found it and found a buyer.
All right, so here's the question. We'll wrap this up a little bit, and I got one little special segment we got to do at the end here. It'll be fun. You might want to have another little sip there before we do it because it'll make your world a little more fun. But if the person's out there, they're interested, what is really the next step? You think the first step for them to just start pursuing this, get some knowledge on it or whatever?
We've got our business partner is actually offering a 5-week online class, and he's going to go into that in a lot more detail. I think they're 2-hour segments once a week. And then he has these, I think Tuesday nights, he offers just a coffee meeting to where people can kind of come on and ask any questions that they want. So he's definitely got the heart of a teacher. He's very thorough with the process. I think sometimes it's not just having the information as much as it is having a support network around you of people who are learning the same things that you're learning. And so that would be a great next step. Also, I mean, just through our Tom Ferry connections, we've had these seminars. We're having a seminar the Monday night prior to Summit there in Dallas at 60 Vines. I can, share information about that. But then that'll give you an overview also with some Q&A. And from the previous seminars that we've done, we always follow up with people who say, they'll send a text message or an email and just say, hey, I left your seminar. Now I've talked to people and I've got 3 ideas that I'd like to explore further. And we're always happy to jump on a Zoom, help them review financials, anything like that we can kind of come alongside of. Ideally, we would love to partner with people all over the US who, in my opinion, I think there are very few people as connected with small business owners as your local real estate agent. I think that realtors tend to know a tremendous amount of small business owners.
She's hot on the trail right now, working on trying to, we got a termite pest control company that she has identified through her network, and it
is a mindset shift too, because even recently, we're here in Nashville. We've had a lot of fun taking some vacations out west, and I've got this pipe dream that I want to go and rent an RV and do the Pacific Coast Highway. And so I was looking into, just a couple of weeks ago, renting an RV, and I was looking at the prices. I was like, well, dadgum, that is expensive to rent those things, and it's the miles and it's all this. And instantly I'm looking at this company and I'm like, man, what would it take to just buy the company, right? And get the RV for free. And that sounds,
I don't want to rent one. I just want to buy your company.
Right.
And then I can rent whatever I want.
It sounds like, I don't know, egotistical to say something like that. But it did indicate that I've had a mindset shift, that I'm like, I'm asking the wrong question. The question is not how much does it cost to rent something like that. The question is, how do I get it for free?
Yeah.
And that's when it was like a light bulb moment that came on for me, that it was like, man, I've just gotten to a point that I'm asking better questions than I've ever asked before. Because like he said earlier, we're smart people. And whenever life presents a series of questions to us, we're very resourceful in figuring out how do we make that happen.
I mean, y'all are well above my pay grade. It's awesome. Just what y'all are doing. If people wanted to get in contact with you, I've got your handles here. And by the way, if you do me a favor for that event in that class or whatever, or your email, I'll put it in the YouTube description so people can follow up with you. So after this, make sure you get that to me. But Bekki Lowrance, realtor on Instagram. Jon, do you not have an Instagram, bro?
I do. It's more of a family Instagram.
Got it. Okay. But find Jon on LinkedIn at n/askjon. Any other last things before I get in my little special segment?
Yeah, no, one thing I would just add to this is that there's been a few times where I'm constantly pushing the envelope and doing things that scare me. Mm-hmm. And every now and then I learned this from my first business partner, Ben, when he had a thing. I asked him one time, I said, have you ever done that before? And he's like, no, but I'm about to, that's a problem I'd like to solve.
Yeah.
And so sometimes I think you end up saying yes, and you pursue things. It's like a dog that chases a car. You don't necessarily know what you're going to do if you catch it. But I think in some of these scenarios, it's just go after it.
Yeah.
And you're going to figure it out. And sometimes if you say, well, what happens if they say yes and they want to sell it to you? Well, how are you going to figure out how to pay for it? How are you going to figure out how to run it? These are all problems that I would love to learn how to solve, because most of the time that means more return for my family, more money for my family. Mm-hmm. Sure. So the bigger the problems you're solving, the
more money you're making.
More money you're making.
Yeah. I mean, that's the magic potion for entrepreneurship, business owners, is like, if you want to do well, solve someone's problem and then sell it. But if you want to, that's simple. I mean, that's all you got to do. So anyway, it's awesome. You guys are great. Hopefully we'll be able to connect in Dallas. And I want an invitation, so make sure I get that. All right. So I've never had a couple duo on the podcast yet. So I want to do, that like finger pointing game of who's this, who's that? Yes. I don't know what that game is called. but I got some questions, and I just like
It's called a game that lands people in marriage counseling.
That's exactly right. So that's my goal. That's why I said make sure I had an extra sip of that George Stagg. So I'm gonna
shortly.
Who is more likely? And then you don't think, you point to yourself or you go. It's no like it's got to be a quick response. If you think, you lose. Okay.
Okay.
I'm keeping points over here, by the way.
Yeah, I love it.
All right, here we go. Who is more dramatic? Okay, so Jon, just FYI, you're going to put your finger in there a little bit. Oh, it was you. Okay. Because outside of your left side of your face, I can't see you.
Okay.
All right, here we go. Who is more competitive? All right. Who's more expressive? Jon, you're
question here.
Sorry. All right. Who is more patient? Who's more trusting? Who likes horror movies the most? Neither one of you. Okay.
No.
All right. Here's a good one. Who is messier? Who's more likely to lose something? Who's more likely to be on Broadway? Who's more likely to become famous? Who's more likely to hold a grudge?
Oh,
really?
Yeah, I can't believe you asked that question.
I'm sorry. All right, here's a good one. Who's more likely to get arrested? Oh my gosh, that's great. Who's more likely to get a tattoo?
Ooh.
Oh, I like that, Bekki.
I was actually going to say neither of us. I was almost going to be like the
I'm
horror
more
question.
likely. I wouldn't do it, but I am more likely to do it.
I'm really getting deep counseling here. I'm only give you 3 more.
Okay.
Who finds it the hardest to admit when they're wrong? That's great. Oh goodness. Who is a better karaoke singer? Okay, we're finding some deep subjects here right now.
Oh my gosh, this is
Good.
All right, last one, and I'll leave it at this. Who spends more time in the bathroom? All right. The last 3 must have been magical because
oh my gosh.
you
Yes.
guys were just like,
We all agreed except for those last
yes, whatever that was. Hey guys, thank y'all so much for joining the closing table. And I hope we'll again continue our relationship. And it's awesome what you're doing. You're very, very inspiring, and hopefully it's inspiration for other people that push them down that direction too.
Awesome. Thanks, Ryan.
All right, y'all have a good day.
All right. You too.